And we're back, and oh boy, this is a first for me with this guest. I've never, well, no, I did have my son. I had my son on the podcast, but outside of my son, and by the time this airs, my two sons will have been on the podcast, but I haven't had other family. Today we have family, sort
Yes.
of. Lamont Mitchell, how are you?
I'm absolutely wonderful, cousin, by some miraculous birth of my daughter, and it's all in love, cousin in love. How about that? We'll
Cousin
go
in
there.
love. That's what it is.
I'm absolutely fabulous today.
Oh, that's awesome. So I have to preface those who are listening, they're like, what are they talking about? So I just met you for the first time in person
Yes.
this past summer at a family reunion. And this is so funny because I was grubbing really hard at the family reunion. I'm like, this food is so good. This food is so good. Where did we get this food? And I remember everyone's like, yeah, food is good. Food is good. And I think Tanza, your daughter, was like, "Oh, Imani, catering did it," and just kind of pointed. And it was like, "Okay, yeah, they killed it. They're great, And I think I may have spoke to you and like, oh, this was so good. And then Tanza comes over like she's like, that's my daddy. I'm like, wait, what? And so Tanza is my cousin, and I just it was like, oh, I didn't know. I have never met him, so I just became really intrigued because I remember when Tanza posted that she was in Merida, Mexico, visiting her dad, and so all the things started connecting. And I had gone to
Yes.
Merida, and Merida is not Cancun or Tulum or this real popular space. So I knew I wanted to tap in and learn more about you. So I'm just excited to have you. And I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. But before I ask you my questions and allow you to answer and share and give the people some wisdom, I want to read something to you. And then we're going to
Okay.
get into our questions. All
Great.
right. All right. Lamont Mitchell is chair of the Anacostia Coordinating Council in Washington, D.C., and is the founder of Imani Catering. Born and raised in the nation's capital, Lamont has deep roots in the city and a strong commitment to its development. A graduate of Howard University,
Woohoo!
that's the other reason we had to connect. With a degree in accounting, he has spearheaded various initiatives aimed at enhancing community development, fostering economic growth, and advocating for equitable opportunities. In addition to his community work, Lamont's thriving catering business, based in the DC metropolitan area, is known for its exceptional service and delectable cuisine. Amani Catering has become a favorite choice for both private and corporate events. Finally, Lamont demonstrates unwavering commitment to the betterment of Washington, D.C., particularly in the Anacostia neighborhood. He is a respected figure in the city and a source of inspiration for aspiring leaders and entrepreneurs. So tell me, how did that feel hearing me read that to you?
Well, I'm while you were reading, I was getting my checkbook ready to write the check for that. Such a wonderful. uh, oh my God! And I'm saying, did I do all that? But anyway, no, it was very delightful. One little sidebar now before we get started.
Mhm.
Um, um, your cousin is Artanza, and which is
Yes.
my daughter,
Yes.
but and if we get into the story about her, we'll find out more about it. But to me, she's Imani, and
Mm.
that's what I named my company after her. That I named her Imani, and
Yeah.
in retrospect to that, in homage to that, she named one of her daughter's middle name is Imani. So the Imani keeps going, and so Imani is it's a dedication to my daughter, which is your cousin, Artanza.
I love that. I love it. And, it's interesting because Tanza is technically my second cousin.
Hmm.
And her mom and I call her Renee, other people know her as Melanie, has always been such, a favorite cousin. And I remember, when Tanza was little and she was kind of quiet when I was around her. And I never really got to, she was a lot younger than me. So it was like, that's my little second cousin. But to see her when she is in her, oh my gosh, she's a theater drama. She's so good with her performance, and just a really light. And I have just really loved actually getting to know her more now as an adult, as a woman, as a mother. So there's a father behind that. And they're obviously genetically, it's in the bloodline. She got a dynamic mama and a dynamic dad. And I would love,
Yes.
the work you're doing for DC. I really loved reading this. Has that, tell me just a little bit more how that has enriched you. Like, how has that served you doing the work that
Yeah,
you do?
well, yes, yes. Thank you for asking that. And DC is my home. And we'll get to this part a little later, but I'm an avid international traveler. I've been in 75 countries across and 6 continents across the
Oh,
globe,
wow.
all on personal travel. So I love to travel, and I've been
Wow.
on 150 international trips. But DC is home for me, and I've never lived anywhere else but DC.
Yeah.
Sort of kind of lament the fact
Mm.
that I didn't live somewhere else, but I love DC. DC is what I know, is
Yeah.
what it, and I remember loving DC so much when I was a kid, about 9 or 10 years old. I would lived in the shadows of Howard University, and I would
Mhm.
tell my little playmates, I said, I'm going to go to Howard when it's time for me to go to college, and they were saying, you'd be lucky to make it out of third grade. You're not going to Howard. And but just putting
Wow.
that seed out there, that's the first point I want to,
Mhm.
just putting that seed out there. I said to myself, I'm going to go to Howard when I get old enough to
Mm.
go to college. And I went to Howard, and the first one in my
Mm.
family to graduate from college. And so, but
Mm.
DC is home for me. I love it. I lived in every part of the city. I now live in east of the river, in the so
Mm.
quote unquote Anacostia Hillcrest neighborhood, and
Mhm.
I've done a lot of big things and good things to DC, and it's been good to me. And I try to get back, and I think it's important that we get back to the community in which we come.
Yeah. DC is special. Like, it's a special little place, and I mean little big place. Because it's not,
Yes.
I think people don't realize, who don't live in the DC area or the DMV, affectionately known, don't realize how tiny DC is in terms of geography, but because it has such, obviously, a bigness about it and importance about it for our country, but just also just the energy is very big. And so I went to Howard, and after I finished Howard, I lived in DC, and I used to tell myself, I'm never leaving DC. I'm never I'm never leaving here. I just love this space so much. And then, life did what it did, and I ended up getting married and moving and all the things. But to your point, it's a special place, and I'm glad that people like you are giving and sharing and living and giving your dollars and supporting the city to be what it is. Well, my next question for you, um, you do not have to share your age. If you'd like to share your age, are you one that would like to share? Now, we just say finding your voice after 40. I know you're after 40. Are you open? You don't have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Well, I'm open. Let's just say I'm in my mid 60s. Uh, yeah, I'm in my mid
Really?
60s. Of course, I got a little gray beard now, but if I color my beard, I could probably get away with late 50s. But what?
I think you could get
Who's
away
really
with
can?
I think you could get away with earlier than late 50s. I mean, if you're beard, because, I've seen you in person, and no, I wouldn't coin you as that. I wouldn't coin you as that. So, this is awesome then, because one of the things the whole reason I do this podcast is to talk to people who are in this part of life that so many people think is kind of this down, oh, we better just go sit down now, retire now, not do nothing now. And I am, instead of complaining about people thinking that, I'm like, well, I'm going to contribute to this conversation and shift that. So it's exciting to bring in people who are willing to share their age range, and especially as a male, because I will admit the podcast has probably been, I mean, we've had men, but more women than men. So I'm really excited about that. So I want you to reflect. I want you to think before your 40s, before you got into this phase of life. How would you how would you describe that man? Who was that man before his 40s, and now into his 60s? Who was that 20
Yeah.
something, 30 something?
Well, that's a great question. I was like most African American men in Washington, having the time of my life, living my best life. But for me, my living life after 40, finding myself after 40, started for me 4 years earlier at the age of 36, 37. And that's when I
Mm,
founded the Money Cafe. But as a young man, I always thought of the fact that um, you could do some great things, but I always thought that if you were married, you could do more great things because you would settle down and you could
mm,
concentrate more. And so I got married for the second time at
mm,
36,
mm,
which was a demarcation point for me because I got married and I started the Money Cafe and Catering Company
mm.
in Southeast Washington D.C. So that was my demarcation. Came a little bit earlier. And by the
Oh.
way, at age 40, which is the midlife crisis, as people like to say, I did go out and buy a Corvette for my 40th birthday that I kept all of 18 months because it was like, it's a beautiful car. I'm working a lot. I'm not driving this car, and it's too low to get into. Oh my God, my back was killing me at 40. It's like this thing is too low on the ground. Um, but that was the point in which I said to myself that you really could do some really great things, and I had done a lot of great things up until that point, but you could really expand this to some really good stuff if
Mm,
you were a little more settled, if you understand what I'm saying, and not
mhm.
running so much and doing so much stuff that didn't really wasn't really making a change maker per se.
Right.
It was having more fun than anything else.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so so that point for me was around 36 when I got married for the second time.
Gotcha, gotcha. And so how did you have that kind of epiphany? Like, was there like a crisis that hit? What was it that was like, you know what, I need to shift? Or was it that you met your wife and it was like, this is now something different? Like what was, and I know women a lot of times want to hear this from men, like what allows men to finally get in that state of I think I need to settle down.
Well,
Not settle, but settle down.
yeah. It's funny you brought that up because I was talking to my ex-wife today, which we are
Mhm.
just extremely close. We are very good friends. We still live around the corner from each other.
Nice.
When we actually broke up, she bought a house around the corner, and I brought another house around the corner, and we could have stayed in the same house, but neither here nor there. But what happened was, I'll never forget it as long as I live. I was dating her for about 4 years, and I guess I wasn't moving fast enough for her, and
Mhm.
so she told me in October of 2001
Mhm.
that this wasn't going anywhere. I'm getting older. I want to have a family. You still want to hang out and have fun. And so she broke up with me, and it was like, okay, I don't care. I can go do a lot of things. But then I was literally heartbroken. Oh my God, I was
Mm.
heartbroken, and
Mm.
I hatched a plan, and the plan was because we were in the same church together. I was also so working at the church at that time, but she was a member
Mm.
as well. And I said on watch night service, which is very important for the African American community. I said for
Mhm.
watch night service, I'm going to propose to her. So I bought this ring, and as she came into the church, I said, I want to talk to you for 7 minutes. We had not talked
Oh
in
my
two
gosh.
in 2.5 months. We had not talked. We hadn't spoken. She wouldn't take my phone call. She was not playing with me and whatever have you. And so
Wow.
on New Year's Eve, I proposed to her. I said, "Listen, marry me. I don't want to live without you." And so
Wow.
what happened was she called my bluff and she said, "Okay, I'm going to take this ring, but here's the caveat: you have to marry me within 30 days. One day over 30, and we're not going to get married." And I'm saying,
Wow.
I don't have a problem with that. I'm already a caterer, so I mean, we got that part. And then so we got married on February 1st, 2002.
You
I
pushed
mean,
it right to the
1992. I'm sorry, 1992. Yes, it
uh,
was the Sunday. It was a great wedding. We
oh
because we didn't
gosh.
have a lot of time. What we did was we got married right after church service. All our friends and family came in at the church service. The preacher did the service, and then we had a reception after that. And so
Wow.
so it was those points. You know, sometime in your life, you know that if
Mhm.
you can just do so much more if you're partnered, if you're with the right person, you can do a lot more as opposed to just floundering your gift around. So that was my 36th. That was my 40th, and then we went on to do the cafe and a lot of other great things. I mean, a lot of great things that's been associated with the cafe since
Yeah.
that point. Mhm.
I love that. And so I hope that, women hear that because I do think that there's a different energy that, men will navigate when they're thinking about kind of their lives and how they want to kind of move and then the support needed and all of that. So I want to tap a bit into Amani Cafe because that seems like that was a pivotal space for you. Is cooking something you've always done and you just did? I mean, what allowed you to say, because this to me is a part of you finding your voice is, I mean,
Well, let
going
me,
you got your degree
yeah,
in accounting and then chef, like, yeah, share.
yeah. Let me tell you about this. Is America holds promise of being able to almost do whatever you want to do. You can really create yourself if you are strong enough, if you are um, not afraid to take chances. You really can do this. I have no formal culinary experience, and let me tell you how I got into the restaurant business because it's a great story. Um,
Mm,
before I 5 years prior to getting married, I was living with a girlfriend,
mhm.
and it didn't work out good. So she left me basically, and so I'm in the house, and I don't know how to cook. And
Mm.
so I'm saying, you know what? I'm gonna fry me some chicken because she used to fry chicken real good. I'm gonna fry me some chicken. So I took the chicken out the freezer, washed it off a little bit, put salt and pepper on it, and flour, and cut the grease on, and I put the frozen chicken into the grease, right? Well, it started a grease fire in the kitchen. So now I have to make a determination. What do I do with this fire? Do I put it out, or do I call Prince George's County Police Fire Department, who, and when they come to your house, if your door is open, they will shut it and then knock it down with the axe,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
destroy the house. So I managed to put the fire out and came to the realization I had no idea about cooking. So I went to I worked at Union Temple Baptist Church at the time as their chief financial officer and the head of their housing corporation. And I asked the church secretary, who was the most amazing cook that I've ever witnessed in my life. And I said to her, listen, I don't know how to cook, but I will pay you to teach me how to cook. And she said, no, you don't have to pay me. Just I told her what happened. And she said, well, when I cook at the church, I'm going to invite you down and we're going to give you some lessons. Okay.
Oh
We
my
we did
gosh.
this for 6 months, and I was getting good at it. I was making homemade yeast rolls and I was doing all this stuff. And I said, you know what? I have some skills. I have some business skills. You have some cooking skills. So we started the catering company together.
Oh
And
my
then from that
gosh.
catering company, it grew so big and so large from 1983 to 1992 that we had to move out of the church, quote unquote, kitchen and move into a restaurant, which I opened the Imani Cafe in 1992 in Washington, which was the
Wow.
first sit down restaurant in Anacostia in 25 years. So it was a
Wow.
big, big, big fanfare. The mayor cut the
Yeah.
ribbon. The news covered it, and that was a place of peace and solace for the community for 15 years.
Mm,
And what it would
mm.
do, it would provide a safe haven. I always like to talk about Imani Cafe because you would see a group of police officers eating at one table, and then a group of some other young men who they might be looking for at the next table.
Exactly.
But they knew that this was a safe
Wow.
zone, no cussing, no chasing nobody, no nothing. Just come in and partake of the food in
Mm,
Imani Cafe. And it was a source of cultural arts too, because I had all of these beautiful memorabilia of black and Negro artifacts and photos and
mm,
autograph stuff. And it was the place to go in Southeast at that time. The mayor would
mm.
come, if everybody from the mayor of Washington would eat there to the chairman of the Republican Party. So they all
Oh,
would come and eat at
wow.
the same place. So it was a blessing to go from, and And it's so funny. One time, and I have this poster somewhere in my house. The Washington Post does um, a style section for weddings every May, and it
Mhm.
talks about the wedding trends that's coming up. The brides. These are the dresses that they're going to use this year. So they were featuring caterers who did a lot of weddings, and I'd done a lot of weddings by this time. And so they had me on the front of the style section as one of the leading caterers, wedding caterers in Washington, in
I
Washington,
love
and it was
this.
great. It's like you could go from burning your house down
I
to,
was
you
just
know,
gonna say.
right by the I like to consider this, and this might be a good point. Um, there is a lot of value in hitherto in the past have the Lord delivered me, therefore I would trust him for the future. That's for people who are Christian. In other
Mm,
words, if you
mhm,
have some success reinforcement, you can use that reinforcement to do a lot of great things. And one
right.
of the major successes for me was I went on a 30-day fast one time, only drinking water and liquids and not a lot of food. And I was able
Mm,
to sustain the greatest urge known to man besides sex, which is food.
mhm,
uh,
mhm.
and you can harness that power to do whatever you want if you just put your mind to it. But you got to have some hitherto in the past. Have the Lord deliver me? You got to have some hitherto to do it. If you don't
Yeah,
have that, you can't harness the power. If you give
right.
into every one of your human desire and not be able to control your desire, mind over matter, you won't be able to succeed in a lot of things. And for people who do these things, it takes great sacrifice. But you got to deal with it internally first to be able to
Yes.
challenge yourself to do some great things that you want to do. A lot of people have ideas. Ideas are a dime a dozen. And a lot of times when I say I got an idea to do this, I mean you ain't done nothing yet. It's like potential. Or she has potential, he has potential. What you're saying is, yeah, you just ain't done nothing yet. But we have to
Yeah.
challenge ourselves, and you can do this at the 40, 50, 60, whatever have you. But you got to decide this is going to be the point for me that I want to do something that God or the Creator has given me tasks to do, and
Mhm.
you got to sacrifice and do it.
Mm. I am so glad you went there. First of all, that okay, so there's two things, two follow-ups. One, I cannot believe you cooked so poorly that you created a fire to then having an actual whole cafe and catering business. I mean, that in itself is so much proof in the pudding. Just so much proof in the pudding of, if you put your mind, your soul, you desire, and put it and do the work, right?
Yes.
Do the acts of faith. What I mean, things that probably I'm obviously you never sat down in your 20s and said, "Oh, I'm going to be a chef one day." Like that never even crossed your
No.
mind. I
No.
mean, yeah, right. And so I really want to highlight that because I think so many people who I think, especially in the way that our culture conditions us to try to decide one thing we want to be when we're 17
Right.
or 18. And then when we decide we want something different, it's like, oh, but is that? And then we go through all these, changes when we just want to change our mind or do something different. I mean, I think this is such beautiful proof that not only is changing your mind, necessary many times, but how fruitful it can become in doing that. Um, and there was something else I don't remember now that I was like, "Oh, there." He said something else that made me really. Oh, well, this is this other thing, and I want to segue into some self care thing. I've been spending a lot of time this season talking to guests about faith and how they honor their belief systems, religion, spirituality, whatever it is that they feel. Because to your point, we honoring a deeper space, a higher source, God, whatever you want to call it, is yes, it's the tether, it's the foundation by which, for you to consider yourself greater, and I think you just gave such a beautiful example of that. And I wonder though, and so I always try to play like the questions, those people who are maybe struggling, they know it intellectually, they know, yes, I have this faith, I have this belief, I practice whatever it is, but still not having the joy in their life. And for you, I guess, what do you do to nurture yourself so that you're willing to kind of, go after these things, to travel all these countries? Is there some kind of practice or something you do to take care of yourself that helps keep you motivated to live the life you want?
Yeah, you have such a great point there because, and I don't care what religion, what faith institution you belong to. If you look at them, they all have the basic tenets and the same tenets that will help us.
Correct.
Whether it's the
Right.
Baha'i, whether it's the Toltec of the Mexicans, whether it's
Right.
going east, and I pick up a lot of stuff in my travel, which travel allows you to do. But I
Mhm.
think the key factor here is that the scriptures tell us even the demons in hell know the scriptures or know what to do. Knowing is not
Mm,
enough. Knowing is not
mm,
enough. We must, as a person of faith. Now, if you got some other thing working, this maybe not apply to you, but as
mm,
a person of faith, we must do everything as with our hands as humanly possible, and then we must pray if it's everything to be done by our creator. But faith without works is dead. And
yes.
I don't care what it is. I always tell people, I don't care what book you choose, but we're gonna choose a book. If we're gonna be, you if you want to be, you can put it. But we're gonna use a system outside of ourselves because we don't know enough, or I don't know enough within myself to guide my life completely. So
Mm,
I want to use a system or a source outside of myself to guide me and ground me. And one of the
mhm,
things with my travel is I seek out spirituality as I go around the world. And I remember my first
mm,
trip was to Brazil with one of my first trip with my church Union Temple, and
mm,
we went to Brazil for the first time, and we went to a candomblé ceremony, and it was so indigenous, so reminiscent of a
mm,
Pentecostal service in
mhm,
America, and you
mhm,
could see the connection of the people. And I always talked about the diaspora in terms of how the enslaved Africans were brought over from ships, and they got into the trade wind, and the trade wind pushed south, and they stopped in Salvador Bahia, and they dropped some enslaved Africans off there, and then they went up. They stopped in Cuba, and they said, "Well, we just want
mm.
12 of them, or 15, or 100 of them." And then they went to Charleston, South Carolina, and they dropped some more people off,
Yeah,
the Gullah Geechee people, whatever. We
yeah.
are the same people. And
Yes.
we redux this 40 generations down the road, 20 generations down the road, and we get to that might be my cousin. Remove 20
Right.
generations. There is a connection, there is a spiritual connection. So I like to think that whatever you do, whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, have a practice that you can ground yourself to and seek a system outside of yourself for all the answers because you don't have all the answers.
Mm,
But you need
right.
to have some hithertos in the past that the Lord delivered me. Therefore, I should trust in goodness. I always ask people and I challenge people. I've been an entrepreneur since I left um, Howard. I went to work as an accountant for 3 weeks and said to myself, I cannot do this. I cannot do this. And I went out on my own. That was in
Mm.
1988. Now,
Wow.
if you were to ask me, where are you going to get the money to live in December of this year, December 2023? Where are you going to get those funds to live? And if you don't tell me this, I'm going to shoot you. I will be dead because I
Mm.
don't know where my money going. I don't know who's going to hire me. I don't know where my benefits going to come from. I
Yeah.
don't know nothing. But I do know hitherto in the past of the Lord delivered me. Therefore, I will trust Him for the future. And either you're going to stand
Ooh.
on that,
Right.
you're either going to stand on the promises of God, of the Creator, or set in the premises. I choose to stand on the promises of God. He did
Yeah.
it before, He'll do it again. And a lot of times with entrepreneurs, we have to have that something to push us further along.
Yeah.
We can do the X's and the O's and the money and whatever have you, but when you working and you've been working at this business for 4 years and you haven't made a dime and you want to
Mm.
give up, you got to get something to keep you going. Or it might mean you stop here and do something else and pivot and do something else. And that's
Mm.
the good thing about finding your voice after 40
Mhm.
is that you get to the situation where you really don't care what people think about you.
Yes.
You
Yes.
make that commitment to yourself that I'm going to live life on life terms, on my terms, on what I want to do. And
Mhm.
that's why it's so important to do the financial stuff. You get rid of the credit stuff, because the less credit and payments that you have, the more things you can do. You would
Exactly.
be shopping. If you wanted to do an idea, you may have an idea that could make $1 million, but you're so stuck in debt that you cannot do
Yeah.
it, because if you don't work for the next two weeks, you're gonna get put out of your house.
Right.
And
Right.
this is
Right.
not done on just a small level. This is done on people who are making
Oh,
$200,000 a
yeah.
year. They're living so
Absolutely.
close to the best that they can't say they are just brilliant people. They could get a contract that will make $3 million a year, but they've not set themselves up to win, because
Yeah.
they've not done the things they need to do. Because if they stop working and don't get money for a month, they're gonna jump off the damn bridge.
Yeah. Yep. Well, you dropped the mic on a lot of points, which I love, and I 3,000,000% agree with you. And I think, living a more we're all being to me, we're in a season, we're in a chapter where we're watching the world shift before our very eyes. And I know it feels overwhelming and frightening and stressful to many. However, what we're being called on, in my opinion, is to do what you're saying. It's time to really tap in and trust and do the acts of faith. No longer talk about it, think about it. Like, it's about doing. And so using tools, I call them tools or modalities, to create a practice so that you can feel connected to God and to your beliefs in a way to give you the motivation to do these things that you just said, to actually move. And then at the same time, you have your degree, you've been educated. We have many of us, especially like you said, at this stage of life, we have lots of receipts that we can do things, right? So
Right.
now it's about trusting that okay, do I have to have all the cars, all the house, all of this to still set up any level of worth? Like, really, where has that really brought us, and it's not to say that we live in poverty or anything, but reevaluating and reassessing so that, to your point, we're living not in these means that stress us further to think that we have to live this other kind of life that takes us away from our truth. So I 3,000,000%, I know for myself, I feel like I'm always going through rebirths, you know, and so I'm, in a season now where it's like, okay, my youngest son's about to graduate from high school. This is the next new chapter. This is a new freedom. So do I have to live in a house, over here in this particular neighborhood? No, like, I don't have to do that. And people are asking, well, where are you going to move? I'm like, I think I'm going to live in a variety of places. And it's like, well,
Yes.
what do you mean a variety of places? I'm like, I mean, a variety of places. It is just me, like, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't,
that's
I mean,
right.
I don't need to have all the things. And yes, I have a partner, but he's an adult. He has his life too. And we're not 20 doing this. We're not 18 doing this. He's not he has his life and he do his life, and I have my life, and that doesn't disconnect us. So I really, there's a wisdom that we have at this age, and I ask people, be willing to use your receipts, trust what you've already accomplished, so I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. You made such beautiful, beautiful points there.
Mm.
And I'm mindful of some things along the way, because I do agree with you. We have to decide our value. Two points I want to make. One is that I encourage your readers, if they haven't already and don't know it, one of the books that changed my life fundamentally is The Four Agreements by.
Mhm.
It's a
Yeah.
great little book.
Yes.
It's 85 pages.
Yes.
You should read it every day,
Yeah.
once a week, and then anytime you get some attitude about what you think about stuff, go back and read it again, because it puts your life in perspective. And I also believe that we have to decide the value for ourselves. I have a friend of mine who is very successful. His wife and him are very successful, from Chicago, and they're entrepreneurs, and they've done a lot of amazing things, made a lot of money. and they shared a lot of their money with philanthropically. But he said to me something that was so unique. The
Mm.
other day, I saw him and he said to me, I said, "Well, how's your golf game coming around?" He said, "Well, I'm winning." I said, "Well, what's your score? What's your score? What are you doing?" He said, "I don't keep score."
Thank you.
He said, "I decide whether I win or not." He said,
Ooh.
"Every day I get up at 77 years old and can walk 18 holes of a golf course and enjoy my life and see the green grass and be here in this normal space, I win. I decide what I win." We do things
Wow.
for other people. We buy
Yes.
houses for other people that we don't even like so they can come to our house and tell us how beautiful the house is. We drive cars. And don't get me wrong, I love cars. I've had 65 cars. I just like
You've
cars.
had 65 cars?
65 cars. I just like cars. I like cars. But do I need 65 cars? No, no. But what happens is we set our values for according to the others, Mr. Others, and
Yes.
how would people judge me if I don't have this big house? And the kid, you're so on point because as we get in our 40s, 50s, 60s, the kids begin to leave.
Yes.
Our job is to raise these young people, give them the values and whatever they have, and you give them the education, the best your money can buy, but to let them go. The good
Yes.
kids don't return. The good ones
Yes.
don't return. And you don't want them to return because once they leave for college, it's a whole new ball game. It's a
Yeah.
demarcation point. We
Yeah.
must then take back our life and begin to do some of the things that we want to. If we want to live, you talked about Merida. I spent 3 months, January through April 1st, out of the
Mhm.
country last year because I wanted to go to stay a place for a month, 6 weeks, as opposed to a weekend, or opposed to a week.
Right.
Because
Right.
then only then can you get to know the people and the culture. And I did Merida, and it's my third time to Merida, but I never
Yeah.
stayed a month. It was amazing the way the Mexicans live in
Yeah.
Merida. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So we have to look at, okay, I'm here now. I don't have debt. I don't have all these bills. I can rent my house out. I can
Yep.
move anywhere I want to. And you
Yes.
live your life with purpose. Life is about experiences, not about things. We get
Yes.
so caught up on that. It's like, how many experiences have you had?
Right.
Have you? Oh!
Right.
I got a Lexus. I got it. You got a Lexus. Got 3,000 miles on it, set in the garage. Have
Right.
Have you taken it cross country? No, I can't
No.
take it cross country. I'm not doing that far. So I think that as we get to the point where money, because a lot of times when you're in your 20s and 30s, it's about money. It's about every dime. That's what you do. You
Mhm.
fuss about, if you're
Mhm.
married and you're in your 20s and 30s, you fuss about money and sex. That's what's
Right.
all day long. And when you're 40 or 50, you got plenty of money and maybe you don't even want a
Right.
whole bunch of sex. So
Right.
therefore, there are other things that might be more meaningful to it. And there's nothing more fulfilling in life for me and my friends than traveling and see this big, big, giant world out there
Yes.
with a lot of great, phenomenal people. I'll tell this story before I get back to you. I'm in Vietnam, Saigon, on a trip by myself. I went out and I was coming back home, back to my hotel one night. And Vietnam, if you know Vietnam, Vietnam is one of the safest
Mm,
countries in the world. The police doesn't
mm,
carry guns in Vietnam.
yeah.
If you leave your pocketbook in a bar, you come back the next day, it's exactly where you left it. And if they steal in Vietnam, if you ever see anybody in Vietnam with one hand, that means he stole something one time.
Mm,
They don't play that. They don't play it.
don't
But
play
I'm
it.
walking back home through this dark alley, dark street, and for the first time in my life, traveling, fear, like, what happened if somebody, you know, kill me or do something to me?
Right.
And for 2 minutes, for a minute, I thought that. Then I thought, like, well, first of all, dead is dead. I got about a better chance getting killed here in Southeast Washington, the way crime is in D.C.,
Yes.
than in
Yes.
Vietnam.
Yes.
But I would have lived doing what I want to do because death will come to
Ooh.
us all.
Oh,
You follow
yes.
me? Live
Yes.
your life. Live your
Yes.
life. Work hard, but play harder.
Harder. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, We could go on and on. And I knew this. I knew when I have, when I meet people and I can energetically feel their energy a certain way and vibrate a certain way. I always, I connect to that, and I'm a very curious person. So I knew when I, met you during the reunion, I was like, oh, I need to have him on my podcast because he's doing some interesting stuff. He's got this whole catering. He lived in Merida, Mexico. Like, I'm like, wait, what? And I did not know that you had traveled to that many, countries, had that many cars. Anyway, I'm a tease on that. That's hilarious with the cars. But this has been so wonderful, and I could go on and on, but we are going to wrap up because of time, and we are going to do a bonus section, and I do have a couple more questions. So if you all are enjoying hearing Lamont and hearing his thoughts and his gems and the things he's dropping, you want to make sure you're part of our Patreon community so that you can watch the video and hear the extra content. But before we go into that bonus, I have two. Well, do I have time? Yeah, two things I want to ask you. One, I want people, if they want to hire you and your catering service, and y'all, I'm telling you now, listen, we were at a family reunion. I don't know if there's a specific type of food that Imani Catering specializes in, or it's anything and everything, but we had family reunion food. But what was so good, like, so you had the mac and cheese, you had the chicken, you had all, but you had some vegetables, some actual
Yes.
crisp vegetables, like not overcooked vegetables, like an actual salad with not just lettuce, like it was. And so the food was so good. And so if people are in the DC area, DMV, they want to use your services, or if they just want to follow what you're doing, is there a website or social media? How can people get in touch with you?
Well, thank you so much. I've been doing this, and it's so funny how life works. I've been catering for the last 35 years. And what I do is called African American Nouveau Cuisine. That's all the flavor and taste of grandma's cooking, no
Mm,
pork and less salt. I use more
mm,
herbs and spices. I get the vegetables in there. I cook vegetables that are vegan dishes and vegan safe.
mm.
So if you come to a party, you can basically eat the vegetables. Even
Yeah.
if you don't eat the meat. Now I do this. We do have we're on online at Facebook and all those places, Imani Catering. But here's one thing about me, and this is really really crazy. I don't solicit business, and I
Yeah.
tell you
Yep.
why. I have a clientele that recommends people, and I will take your job if somebody else recommend you. Say my cousin called me and said, "You do this. Would you do this for me?" I don't. At this time, I'm trying to slow down. If you
Yeah.
keep taking, you keep building book. But
Yeah.
if you find me, you can have me. And
I
and
love
and
it.
I like to think the food is good, but I also like to think that and maybe we'll see it in the bonus section. I would just give some advice to some people trying to find themselves over
Yeah.
40 in
Yeah.
closing. And
Yeah.
and and let me just say one thing we have to concentrate on if we want to be successful in later life is that we bring our health with us. We bring
Mm.
our past with us, we bring our health with us. If you want to be active in your life, then you need to be active and you need to be healthy now to be able to transition over into that. There's so many things that's hereditary and as we get older, but you want to limit those things as much as possible. And you
Mhm.
can't be successful if you're not healthy. You can't,
Absolutely.
because success, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, takes some time 15, 16, 17. I still work 18 hours a day. I don't want to
Mm.
do it. Trust me, I don't want to do it. And my son is now helping me. But
Mhm.
sometimes that has to happen. But you have to be healthy. You got to be
Yes.
everything in moderation. Your food, you got to make sure you exercise. And I could talk about my walking group that I started after diabetes kid. But we'll talk about that later. But you have to be healthy. You
Yes.
have to be wise with your resources and finances. You have to be learning. You need to know everything there is to know. There's this mantra that says you need 10,000 hours in your profession to be a professional or be a expert at it.
Mhm.
Well, sometimes we're behind, so we got to make up. So that means you got
Mhm.
to really get out there, know what you're doing, know your trade. You got to know just as much about your trade as the next person. But you
Mhm.
all got to take all these principles, and then you got to have time for quiet meditation and peace to find solace to give you the energy to do what you need to do. And you
Absolutely.
can define your next 40 years.
Absolutely. Ah, well, I love it. And again, this is super inspiring, and I appreciate you so much for taking the time. I know it probably felt random, like, why is this woman asking me, but I'm so glad that you went ahead and said, yep, let's go ahead and do it because this has been so inspirational. You've really shared some really important food for thought that people, replay, you guys, listen to again, because there's a lot that you shared, and a lot of really good information that is very tangible to use to help support you. So my last question, I ask every guest this. It's gonna feel random. I do tend to be sometimes random, but I'm a musician, and so to make sure that I always contribute to my music identity and love and passion, I ask people, what is your theme song? What is a song that you just love, that motivates you, keeps you inspired, or you just jam to, you just love?
Well, that's a great question. It's almost akin to which one of your kids you like the best. But
Right.
I am a music of just love music. I've traveled all over the world to some of the major jazz festivals, from the
Yeah.
North Sea Jazz Festival to
Yeah.
Newport and whatever have you. I love jazz vocals, particularly by women, but also men. Um, and Standard, the Great American Songbook. I love anything by that, and
Mm.
I love this. Like I've seen Samara Joy
Yeah.
twice this year. She's just an amazing young person who's keeping jazz alive. But
Yes.
I'm a big fan of Johnny Hartman
Right.
and John Coltrane. It's just amazing that the work that they've done with jazz vocal, and Gregory Porter is also one of my
Yes.
favorite. So I
Yes.
love the vocal because the vocals are lyrics, they are poetry, and we have this
Yes.
ability to speak. They're not just a whole bunch of music, blah 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 blah, that don't mean anything. But there are stories in their poetry, and it's just phenomenal. Just to sit for hours and hours and hours to listen to jazz vocals, whether it's Aretha Franklin singing jazz vocals
Yeah.
to Lady Day, you name it. I love it.
Ah, well, I am a jazz head, and the music that I do is like a soul jazz. When I was singing full time, that's really what I was doing, was mostly soul jazz. Oh, I don't see you. I think you popped away. All right. And so I think that Lamont might have popped away in our visual, but that's all right. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna get ready. Oh, there you are. There you are.
Yes.
I was like, he disappeared. No worries. But I was gonna say, jazz vocals is my thing. I think Samar Joy, I agree with you. I love that she's perpetuating that styling of music and giving it access to different generations and not just one specific generation that has followed jazz. And definitely, listen, Gregory Porter all day, all night, all day, all night. I
Yes.
love
Yes.
love his vocals. So well, this has been awesome. We're going to go to our bonus. And so we're going to say bye, and we'll be back again next week for our audio podcast. But if you're on Patreon, stay tuned because we will continue. So thank you again. All right, bonus, real quick, and then I'm gonna let you go do your day. Work your 17 hours. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
First question is, you kind of alluded to this as far as like some advice to be able to give, but what what do you think that you are most at this stage of your life looking forward to really doing? Because you already kind of shared some advice for people. You gave wonderful advice. I want to hear what are you looking forward to at this point? Or do you feel like, hey, whatever happens, just happens?
Well, that's a great question. One of my devotions that I do now is I'm the chair of the Anacostia Coordinating Council, which has been around celebrating 40 years, and I've been co-chair and a member of the council probably 30 of those years. And I also use that as my give back, and I use
Mm,
my accounting experience, and I'm the interim operating officer. So we lost our operating officer about maybe 3 years ago, and I stepped into
mm,
the role, and I
mm,
sort of kept it up without pay. By the way, you don't get paid
mm.
for this, but but
Wow.
but it's my labor of love, and I love doing that. I have a heart for people in terms of making the community where I live and work and play a better place. And I think through
Yeah,
the council, we do that. We do that type of work. So I'm looking
I
forward to
love
doing a
it.
little bit of that, a little more traveling, and a little less working. My son has joined me in the catering. He works for Peloton, and Peloton had a big layoff. He came to work with
Mm,
me, but he's just enjoying the work and he's learning the business, and hopefully within the next 2 or 3 years he can take more responsibility for the business, and I can do more traveling. And
yes.
ideally, I would love to live out of the country for six months out of the year, and then come back for 6 months
Yeah.
in DC.
I love that. I'm on that same trajectory of eventually living out of the country a certain time of the year and coming back. I'm building up toward that. For right now, I'm just
Yes,
trying to live in not in Chicago in the winter. That is
yes.
goal one, and I think we'll be able to make that happen as of next year. But and so my final question is, what's something that you wish I would have asked that I didn't, or just a final thought that you want to give that.
Oh, that's an interesting question. You didn't ask much about my time at Howard, and then but no, but that's great. But my final thoughts would be, I think the whole idea of finding yourself after 40, finding your groove, it's not as hard as it may seem. And there needs to be some steps that you do to prepare yourself for this, whether it's 40 or 50. Because if you're now 40 at 41, 45, and you're trying to find yourself at 50, there are some steps that you need to take to prepare yourself for it. You just can't jump in. I
Right,
always like the success is the intersection of opportunity and preparedness. Well,
right,
if you're prepared, you never get the opportunity, that won't work. And if you have the opportunity but you're not prepared, that won't work. So
right.
you got to do everything you got to do to prepare yourself. But the biggest issues with us is spending and getting our spending under control. We don't know how that changed the
Mm,
trajectory of our lives, because the way we live and the way we spend, it stops us from doing the things
yes,
that we want to do.
yes,
And I think that it could mean a new career that could even be more lucrative for you if you were
yeah,
in a position, because that's a part of the not being prepared. But you had
yeah,
that opportunity, but you didn't prepare because you are in a situation where you're spending all the money. And if I miss two paydays, it's like, oh my God, all hell and broke loose.
right,
And we don't do that. But I think that that's part of being prepared to live the final stage, or the second stage, or the second chapter of your life. It's
yes.
being prepared both mentally, spiritually, and financially to be able to do that.
I love it. I love it, and I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you 3,000 times more. So I thank you again for sharing. I know I've said that several times, but I really enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed learning more about you, and really enjoyed hearing you share some nuggets to help people. You know what I mean? To for people to find their voice and to seek out things. And every week somebody share something a little bit different there, just maybe same kind of theme, but another element. So I hope that people, by listening to this, those of you watching, you were, you're getting a little bit more energized to be you. Because that's really ultimately what it is
Yeah.
creating space to be the you. And if you don't know who the you is, to your point, finding some external tools to start to be able to tap in so that you can find more of your voice and who you are. So I love it. I love it. I love it. That is all that we're going to do. I'm going to have you stay tight. For everybody else, I'm going to end the recording and we'll be back again next week. By the time this airs, we'll be going into 2024. So that's a really big deal. So I'm looking forward to sharing even more wonderful guests in 2024. So thank you. I appreciate you. And